to the second part of our submissions hearing on our freedom camping bylaw. So as I said before the break, thank you to our elected members for your focus and your questions, and I assume that will continue with our next presenters as we head into this. We are discussing this freedom camping bylaw that we've consulted on. We've had a large response, and that's been fantastic. We've heard some impassioned appeals this morning in regards to some of the issues that are presented through the draft bylaw. I note that this draft bylaw is in response to the Freedom Camping Act that was passed by central government, which enables freedom camping across anywhere in New Zealand where we don't have restrictions or bylaws or prohibitions. So the question we're doing here is how do we ensure that we respond to that act in a way that is appropriate for Kapiti, that enables us to protect what is important to our community, but also enable our manuhiri, our visitors, clear understanding of where and how and what they can be doing as freedom campers in this district. So it's really great to be hearing from our public, for people of our community and the issues that they see with the bylaw. So having said that, I welcome Felicity Underhill to come up and present, and also Susan. I'm not going to pronounce your surname correctly. I'm really apologetic. You can help me with that when you introduce yourself shortly. Thank you. So Susan and Felicity. Felicity will present first, and Susan is next in line. So there we are, ready to go. Thank you, Felicity, for your patience, and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Kia ora katoa. Ko Tararua te Maunga, ko Otaki te Awa, ko Ngāti Rokawa te Iwi, ko Felicity Underhill, tōko ingoa. I live in Otaki Beach, as do my parents and as have my tūpuna for generations across the region. Marine Parade is a quiet residential street with houses on one side and beach on the other. I'm lucky enough to walk across Otaki Beach and Marine Parade almost daily, and I see how it is enjoyed by so many different people. It's a very special part of Kapiti Coast, and it's rare for Kapiti in that anyone can see the sea from the road or the car park without private property or without the bush and dunes in the way. People, families, tradies, long-haul truckers, bus drivers, those from the rest home across the road, use the car park to take a break, have their lunch or breakfast with a view of the sea, park to take a walk along the beach or go for a surf or ride their horse. In the evenings, as we've heard, the car park is regularly filled with people coming to watch the sunset over the sea. Let me start the submission by saying I am supportive of a bylaw around freedom camping. I'm supportive of council having the ability to monitor and enforce the rules to help minimise negative impacts on both the community and other campers. I would also like to see additional monitoring and enforcement of other beach issues such as motorbikes and driving along the beach. The focus of this verbal submission, though, will be the negative impacts of the disproportionate number of campervan sites proposed for Otaki Beach Car Park, and some thoughts on alternatives. I note at the outset that Council's own commissioned report by consulting company Thrive refers to the benefits of dispersing campervan sites along the coast and recommended no more than 2 to 8 sites at the Otaki Beach Car Park. And this contrasts sharply with the proposal for 14 sites here. Some of these pictures may echo what we heard from the Clelands. This is the view of the sea opening out in front of you as you come up Tasman Road. And it's when that breath you were holding that you weren't aware you were holding, it's when you let that breath out and breathe in the wild, salty sea air. Studies have shown that having a regular access to a panoramic vision, that long view to the horizon, improves mental health and helps the body turn off its stress responses, which is something I'm sure we could all do with. This is that same view from the same spot on Tasman Road, now with the proposed campervan superimposed, and this is to scale. And I note that the positioning of this wall of campervans is also right where those locals currently park up to have a view of the sea, due to the sloping nature of the site. I don't know about you, but I have a visceral response when I look at this picture. It immediately closes off that well-loved view of the sea. It changes the space from one that belongs to everyone to one that is overwhelmingly given to camper vans. Driving up Tasman Road, you'd have no idea of what was happening on the other side of those camper vans. And what does that do to the safety of others attempting to use the car park? This is now an aerial view of the same wall of camper vans as proposed. The reduced visibility means less safety for other car park users, walkers, children riding bikes. And as a woman who regularly walks through that car park, it's currently an open space, well lit from the road, this wall of camper vans would make me feel significantly less safe. I will not be able to be seen from the road, there are hidden and dark corners, and it will be harder to avoid oncoming and manoeuvring traffic. I already avoid walking along the south end of the beach, where camper vans have taken over, due to feeling that I am in their space. This wall would turn this open access car park and beach access into something belonging to others. Now, recognising that, of course, people with camper vans would also want to enjoy the views of the sea, I propose a couple of alternatives, moving away from the concentration of a single site. In this picture, you can see that I have placed 4 camper vans dispersed across the car park, and this would have far better visibility and safety outcomes. It also aligns far better with the recommendation of Council's consultants, and frankly, I think far more attractive for campers as well, as mentioned in the submission by the Motor Caravan Association this morning. Now, putting 4 there is still more than any other site being proposed in Kapiti, and I think 2 to 3, aligning with those other sites, would be more fair. Now, if more sites are needed, then dispersing them along other sites in close proximity will remove the impact of that wall of camper vans and retain the ease of access for council monitoring. This is an example of a site just north of the surf club, which could accommodate at least 1 camper van and still have room for a horse float to manoeuvre. I haven't even touched on the proposal to allow non-self-contained campers at this site. With the amount of toilet vandalism we've unfortunately seen across the region and the necessary closure of toilet facilities at night, there's an increased likelihood of continuing to find human waste in the dunes from overnight stayers, as we have already. I'd also note the direct clash between this proposal and the location of proposed accessible parking under Otaki Beach development plans that are currently under consultation by Council. In summary, yes to a bylaw, no to non-self-contained campers, and no to a wall of camper vans. Let's disperse them evenly along the Kapiti coast and ensure public and local safety and access is retained. Questions?
Fantastic, Felicity. Very clear, very succinct. Any questions from around the table? Councillor Cofford.
Oh, thanks, Felicity. Just a quick one. Have you noticed any increase in the camper vans since Byron Brown's was sort of closed down and sold off as a camping ground?
I haven't been personally in that region for long enough. I've moved back home recently. What we do see is I think someone mentioned before sort of 0 to 6. We do see a handful of camper vans turning up sort of now and then. We often see as well people staying overnight in their cars in the region. There's definitely a need to deal with both for people who are unhoused. We need to be dealing with that separately, as well as making sure we have some sites. But I think we're also looking at potentially the campsite Otaki Gorge reopening soon, which might provide more opportunities as well.
Oh, thanks for that. Yes, I've been a firm believer that you don't sit there goggle-eyed at the view all the time, even in a camper van. And so you can actually have a cluster of them away from the beach, but close to the beach with good access. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Felicity. I see in one of the photos, not that one, which is quite an impactful photo, isn't it, compared to what the before and after, but the one, because some of these caravans now are just getting like bloody mobile homes, aren't they? And so there's a picture here of a ute that's towing a caravan as well. So the length of that combined, I'm just wondering if you see many, well, obviously there's one in the photo, but if you see many of those, and I wonder if we have taken into consideration the amount of space that would take up.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question, and Susan will actually cover some of that in her submission. We do see large vehicles using this car park. We see buses and coaches bringing school students down here. We see bringing people from rest homes from Manawatu down as well. It's a regular sight, as well as I mentioned the horse boats and large trucks who are stopping to enjoy the view. That will all necessarily have an impact on their ability to manoeuvre through the site should you have this wall up.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Councillor Halliday.
Look, I just wanted to say thank you for an excellent submission. We might be starting to thin out on questions, but it's not because of the content. It's just because what we're hearing is confirmation of what we've heard
Great.
previously there as well. I just wanted to point that out.
Thanks.
But no, very good submission. Thank you.
Fantastic. Look at that. You didn't have to wrangle too many questions. Well done, Felicity.
Well, how does this work?
Appreciate your input. And
Okay.
the microphone is now slid across to Susan Delide. Delifta.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you for improving my knowledge in pronunciation of words. I've had a couple of those today in terms of names, so I appreciate that, Susan. Look forward to hearing from you about the submission, your submission. Thank you.
So I would like to begin by saying that in principle I do support the bylaw. I live at Otaki Beach, but my views are broader than our car park, although it is important to me. It's very important. And sorry. So as Felicity says, the foreshore is unique on the coast. It's undeveloped and wild. This is no accident. It's by vision, by community vision. And at this point, I would like to acknowledge Tokiora's submission earlier, and with complete support. She describes the fragility of the waterways and the massive significance from a hapu perspective, which I have at the back of my mind, but obviously I'm not so qualified to speak to. And in fact, the thing that I know that I draw on to create significance for the foreshore is rooted in colonist history, really. So, you know, that's a... So this expansive horizon is what makes Otaki magic for locals and for visitors. Oh, no, it's good, sorry. Is that right? Yeah, sorry. It's what we have, and it is a taonga worth protecting. You can see this far from the south, to the south. Oh, sorry. Oh, the arrow button. Okay, I'm a bit old school. So you can see this far to the south and this far to the north. Only the surf club, thankfully. This foreshore is the Otaki landscape character. But what happens here is the community character, diverse people, diverse activities. The beach car parks are fully utilised daily, and a concentrated freedom campsite of 14 will greatly conflict. And again, at the north of the car park, this is where the non-self-contained vehicles are proposed. Otaki has a rapidly growing permanent resident population. Recreational activity is, of course, increasing. And let's consider the adverse effects which freedom camping will obviously bring to this spot. one of the things that that really concerns me is that once a site is designated, it initiates a perceived right to occupy, and the Kiwi personality has an intrinsic respect for personal space and privacy, which I think will mean that many people will be intimidated or reluctant to participate in the space as we have and do freely as it is. So the others are disturbance, rubbish, conflict, so that they've been spoken about before. For most visitors, the Marine Parade intersection at Tasman Road is the threshold, the first view, the ocean vista in all its characters. I wanted to test for myself what it will actually feel like. And this is roughly to scale, it's old school. And relative to the two pedestrians, I checked out on the internet, and for legal road use, a vehicle of 10 metre length is allowed to be 4.3 metres high. So the open space is completely dominated. The issue for me is really the size of vehicles that are being allowed to park there is something that is really, really significant as a problem. This simple exercise showed me that that it would feel equivalent to the bulk and form of a low-rise apartment block, and the ocean view is completely lost. I also wanted to test how it would actually practically work and plan. So using a turning circle diagram, which is shown in red on the site plan at the right, with 12 10-metre vehicles drawn to scale. It doesn't really work for traffic manoeuvring for these vehicles or for other user parking or activity. Just to go back to what Felicity was saying about buses and large trucks and what have you, what I've observed is that they always park in the other orientation at times, when they are in that car park. It seems to be the only feasible way for such a large vehicle to work in there at all. So my position is really that freedom camping should be prohibited on the foreshores across the whole district. Having said that, in accepting that there is pressure to put freedom camping at Otaki Beach, I've mocked up an alternative suggestion which is more generous than some of the others. So I've highlighted that in orange, so 5 regular size camper vans, so that's less than 8 metre length. And this plan also shows the cafe truck, which is currently there. But I would like to reinforce that my ideal position is that freedom camping is prohibited across the whole foreshore, curbside included. Now, Otaki has, somebody asked the question of how come we've got 14 allocated to the car park there. Otaki has been the subject of an undisguised agenda to remove freedom camping from the river mouth and to put it somewhere else in a large number. Moving a problem doesn't make it go away, unfortunately. It took me a while to realise that under the bylaw as it's proposed, everywhere will be legal freedom camping unless it is specified as restricted or prohibited. This so long as it fits within the provisions of the Act. So I've suggested the three guides that should, that could be part of the bylaw across the whole district, that limits the groups to 1 to 3 naturally dispersed. That the 8 to 10 metre size vehicles have too much negative impact and should definitely be prohibited on all of the foreshores, including curbside, and that non-self-contained vehicles should only be permitted directly adjacent to facilities. I looked into the Act and other documents that were published on the Kapiti District Council website. The legislation is actually empowering to the local authority. As I say there, the rules are tools. Kapiti Coast has the policies to make things that stick. It's got teeth, as it were, to protect against negative effects. It all depends on the vision, your objective. Kapiti Coast has a great set of documents, vision statements, strategies and objectives. I just hope that the final bylaw will reflect this vision. And in closing, I would like to see a renewed emphasis on research into the impact of and different site options across the district. The council can protect if it wishes. This is Otaki Car Park as it should be for everyone, every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. It's always great to see photos of representing our district, because we live in a beautiful district, and part of our challenge, I think, under our feedback we received from Vision Kapiti, which you quite clearly have reminded us of, is that feedback from our community needs to inform our bylaws. So that is a point well noted. Questions? Yes, Councillor Warwick.
It's not a question, just thanks for coming. It means a lot. It gives the perspective to everyone around the table. Thank you both.
Same comment, just a very heartfelt submission. A lot of thoughts gone into that, and really appreciated the effort you've both taken to bring this to the table.
Thank you.
I'll echo those. So thank you, Susan and Felicity, for your time today and the time that you've put in a lot of reading and research behind your submissions. Sorry, Councillor Wilson, the late entry.
Thank you very much. I'd note from your photos that the rubbish bins in any event are just appallingly inadequate. Thank you. That's a very telling photo. Needs to be dealt with whether we've got freedom camping or not.
Yes.
But I know we'd mentioned earlier that if people aren't able to camp in these particular car parks, that they'll probably park in the street. So I'm assuming, just make the assumption here, that your response to that is about you're saying not against freedom camping, but there are other places that you could have it, right?
I think that there are many places across the district where it's possible and pleasant to freedom camp. I've done a lot of freedom camping in my own time, actually, and I think that the way the bylaw stands at the moment, there are very specific and such a limited number of sites that are described by the bylaw and defined by it, and it leaves everything else open to up for grabs, essentially. And what I would like to see is a bylaw which is very defined, very prescriptive, that takes account of locations where people would choose to park on the curb because it's the perfect spot, you know, and essentially it ruins it for like the majority of, you know, everybody else. And so that's what I would like to see the development in the bylaw is to essentially make it draconian, you know, like this is where you can do it and not here, nowhere else. And what I've sent through in my written submissions, I included a link to the Tasman District Council bylaw, which I'm familiar with because of associations down there. And they had a huge problem with freedom camping on all of their foreshores. If you look at that document, you can, it's just like red zone, red zone, red zone. You're allowed to do it here. You're allowed to do it here. You're allowed to do it here. And the other thing that has, you know, has come to my knowledge and my sort of working things out is that there's reserve land, there's dock land, there's regional council land, there's LINZ land, which the council can actually, by arrangement, you know, manage as a freedom camping area. So there's a lot more scope for selecting sites than has been incorporated into the bylaw. And you know, there are documents in the council that show the extent of these sites if anybody's interested in asking for that.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I take the point. There seems to be an obsession with these beach views, and yet Kapiti has some of the most spectacular bush views and inland views. And I think we've missed a trick here.
Yeah.
So thank you for highlighting that.
Just further to that, if you're in a camper van, are they sitting in the driver's seat? I don't think so. You know, so you know, there's some sort of silliness about it. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Fantastic. Enjoy the rest of your day. Aroha Kona. Haere mai, welcome to the table. Thank you for your patience again. So this is on page 43 of your documents, councillors. And there is an extra submission that is coming that is a printed version, which is adding some extra information to the submission from Aroha. Aroha, if I can get you just to pull that microphone round towards you, the whole thing, perfect. Thank you, so we can hear you succinctly. Right, over to you.
E kore au i ngaro he kākanoa hau I rue mai I Rangiatia. I will never be lost for I'm a seed sown from Rangiatia. Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko tararo te maunga, ko ota ki te awa, ko tainui te waka, ko Ngāti mai ota ki te hapu, ko Ngāti raukoa te iwi. He uri au no Ngāti mai ota ki, no Ngāti raukoa ki te tonga ki Otaki. Ko aroha kona tōku iwi. He māngai mō te mātou hapu, he whakapuaki I o mātou, tū ko tahi ki te kaupapa nei. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi kauatu kia koutou, nai kai arati o te kaunihira, mo te whai wai ki te rangonga o mātou nei whakaro. On behalf of Ngāti Maiotaki of Ngāti Raukoa ki te Tonga, I formally oppose freedom camping within our rohe and other areas of cultural and environmental significance. As mana whenua alongside our whānau of Ngāti Pare, Ngāti Kōriki, Ngāti Huia ki Katihuku, and Ngāti Kapu, Manawa Whiti, our connection to the land is not recreational. It is ancestral, it is spiritual, and intergenerational. Many of the areas where freedom camping occurs or is proposed are wāhi tapu or wāhi taonga. These places hold deep significance to our people, and the presence of campers who may not understand or respect these sites is a violation of the tikanga and mana of the whenua. Freedom camping has resulted in waste left behind in bush, rivers, and our coastal zones, damage to our native ecosystems and wildlife, contamination of our waterways, general degradation of our natural environment, which we as kaitiaki strive to protect. These actions are inconsistent with the principles of kaitiakitanga and sustainable land stewardship. Our responsibility as kaitiaki is to uphold the mauri of the land and water for present and future generations. Freedom camping without proper management or consultation with mana whenua undermines this role and breaches Te Tiriti o Waitangi principles, particularly the obligation to actively protect Māori cultural values and taonga. We request a ban or a strict regulation of freedom camping in culturally and environmentally sensitive areas, robust enforcement of existing bylaws, co-governance or co-design with mana whenua when regarding camping policies, visitor education that includes local tikanga and respect for wāhi tapu. Conclusion, we urge the Council to prioritise the voice of mana whenua and act decisively to protect our taiao and our tikanga. Freedom camping not must come at the cost of our sacred sites, ecosystems, or our cultural identity. Hei whakakapi I nei kupu, ka tikina I ngā kōrero tuku iho o ngā tūpuna. Whatu ngaro te tangata, toitu te whenua. People will come and go, but the land remains. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, aroha. I appreciate your submission and the heart in which it is communicated to us. Just acknowledge the role of mana whenua in this space, and particularly we've heard that pretty clearly this morning in the submissions, particularly around Otaki, and your feelings around protecting the environment and the foreshore and the awa of that area. So I think that's been very clearly heard, so thank you for your adding your voice to that. We do have a couple of questions. I'll hand over Kim Tahiwi.
Kia ora aroha. I don't have any questions. I just want to acknowledge the submission because it touches on very clearly and succinctly the actual main points that mana whenua have raised in these spaces. And if I'm listening, then I don't know if anyone else is hearing this, but everything coming out of Otaki is telling us that we need to go back to the drawing board. And your submission has just reiterated that and tautoko by Topiora and all the previous submitters that Otaki needs to be protected. And so I think it's quite clear that we need to go back to the drawing board on that. So, ngā mihi.
Kia ora, Kim. Councillor Warwick.
I just wanted to say thank you as well to you and everyone who has come from Otaki to speak, because it's time out of your day, but it's really important to our community. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Kia ora aroha, thank you very much for this. I think probably the most telling line that I've heard today is that we said our connection is not recreational. I think it's quite important that that's acknowledged, that it isn't recreational, that there are some higher level values going on here. Yes, I'm with Kim on this, so I think this bit needs another look.
I'm 7 generations of whānau that have lived all their lives on Otaki.
Yeah, that's right.
I have children and mokopuna that currently live in Otaki. When we stand at the beach, my mokopuna can stand there and see their maunga in Taranaki and Ruapehu. When we look to the south, we can see the sounds. These are the connections we as mana whenua have to these sites. So we don't just look at Kapiti and the beautiful sunset. There is whakapapa. We're also worried about the trawling that is happening on our beach, the wasted kai, the unsupervised taking of kaimoana that is over and above what it should be. Our mokopuna are going to have nothing when we used to have everything.
Kia ora aroha.
Kia ora.
Not much can be said in response to that. No other questions around the table. Appreciate the time and energy that has gone into those submissions and representing your iwi and whānau and hapu of the Otaki Rohi. So thank you. Thank you for that, aroha. Enjoy the rest of your day. Right, moving on our list with Steve and Janet Lang. Maybe we don't. They're on Zoom. Look, I didn't see that. They're online on Zoom. So welcome, Dr. Steve and Janet.
Oh,
Lang.
hi there. Greetings.
Greetings.
Who am I talking to?
This is Deputy Mayor Lawrence Kirby, and I'm chairing this meeting. Welcome to the table to present your oral submission. We've got all of the councillors and a few community board members around the table who, after your submission, will probably have some questions for you.
Okay. Right.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Well, welcome. Thank you for this opportunity. We are in support of the idea of a freedom campsite down at the pavilion end in Otaki. We think it's a good initiative. There are some suggestions that we have about that site, possibly considering moving the, instead of parking the vans closer to the beach, on the beach side of that car park, would mean that they would be lower down, less visible, a bit more protected from the weather, and it would.
It's flat land too.
And it's flatter land, so they wouldn't have to be chocking, which is always really awkward for vanners. They hate having to do that. We think that although we think it's a good idea to establish a new campsite, we think it's imperative that the old campsite is properly closed. I presume that you know that at the moment that KCDC at one time in the past designated the river mouth as being a freedom camping area, and I think there were either 6 or 8 vans were allowed, no campfires. That
2 nights.
And stay for 2 nights, but it was then that was rescinded when KCDC considered that it was Lynn's land, Land Information New Zealand, and so they took the signs down. When would have that been, of Janet?
About just after Christmas. So now
this Christmas.
Yeah. So
just
now
gone.
we have sort of upwards of 50 vans camping there. And from a vanner's perspective, it's great because you can go there and stay as long as you like, do what you like, light fires. No one's going to come and tell you anything at all. So it's got, it's on social media now that the Otaki Rivermouth campsite is one of the best in the country because you can do what you like. So you're going to really have to work hard to close that one down and get everybody up by the surf club, which is much better because there's toilets there and showers, and it's a much nicer place to camp.
So you'll need to do the same monitoring of the revised campsite area. At the moment, there is no monitoring, but I think there used to be. KCDC used to
have it like a campsite ambassador
in the past, but then again with the signage taken down and that role rescinded by KCDC, so that operative was also removed. But you're going to need to do something like that down at the other end, the pavilion end,
to stop people nipping down onto the beach and lighting driftwood fires, which will happen if it's not closely monitored.
I think the council or councillors had a flyover looking at the river mouth with the Freedom campsite that you've designated in the past and now rescinded is not coming up on social media as having been rescinded. Rather, it's still a Freedom campsite, and comments on social media are that it's a stay as long as you like. Driftwood fires not a problem, and park anywhere. And so that's what people have done. But it's really eroding all of that river mouth, and generally the Takatai Carpety Research Group determined that this was an area of accretion, and so left to its own devices, the sea will mound
the
gravels and build a natural dune. But if that's eroded, which is what the camper vans are doing, then actually it's undoing all of that accretion, which is contrary to what Takatai Carpety considered needed to happen for this area, that it was worthy of adaptation because of the accretion of stones, etc., that happens here. But it has to be that these large bands and large numbers, it could still need to be removed, but it could still be a day visitor park up, so fishermen can still get down there. And that could then be monitored, just how busy is it if the camper vanners aren't there overnight. It's still an issue that would need to be monitored, but because of this erosion factor. What else have we got to say, Janet?
No, I think we could stop there and sort of ask for any feedback on what we've said so far, or questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Doctor and Janet. Appreciate your thoughts and your input.
Yeah.
I love the reference to Takatai Kapiti and the coastal accretion, the damage that's being done there with camper vans. It's very relevant to us as we head into some of that work later.
Yes, yeah.
We do have a couple of lights on around the table for maybe some questions or some highlighting of some points that you've made. So I'll hand over to Councillor Warwick.
Kia ora, Steve and Janet. I'm just wondering, when you want to move 14 vans down to a very community used car park, have you been listening to the other submitters online at all?
No, but I can imagine.
Not at this hearing, but I have in social media. I've heard comments about the desirability or otherwise of what is often like blocking views, and then there's and I know that there are conflicting views in the area. I think the pursuit of the best site is not mine to make, but I do know that the river mouth is possibly the worst site because of the erosion that's happening there. And so that has to be closed.
And the vandalism,
and somewhere else
the
found.
antisocial behaviour that goes on down there is really bad. And having it over by the surf club and round there, it's it's much safer for vanners. There's only one comparative site that I can think of, like the Otaki one, and that's just north of Invercargill. which was an ex-council one, and the council walked away. And it's you can't go there because it's so unsafe. From a vanners, where Steve and I have been vanners for many years, and I don't think there's many freedom campsites in New Zealand that we haven't been on. The best ones to go are always the ones by, round houses. You just feel a lot safer there. And yeah.
And it's about getting the right numbers, not parking so close. You've got to be able to
Open your van door.
Yeah. But there are a few, I'm sure, councils around the country that you'd say, oh, well, they got it about right.
New Plymouth, they're pretty good with their campsites, and they're in an urban area, and you can camp down there. From a van's perspective, you feel really safe. I don't think you're particularly in the way. We often meet the people that live around there and quite friendly with them, and they come over and talk to us. It's you're part of a community quite quickly. So yeah, the swings and roundabouts.
We've heard a lot from the community about the destruction of the community use of that car park.
Right.
Just so you know the context of what's come to us, and that's my view too. That car park is actually very well used by the community. Morning, lunchtime, nighttime, watching the sunset, having dinner. So it seems like we're just moving the problem to another place that's going to disrupt our community too. And so it would be good to not here because we're a bit pushed for time, but think about where else we could put them. We don't need them right in prime position.
Yeah. We were thinking about this earlier, thinking about the other side of the basketball court. Between there and the launching area is an area of foreshore. It's scrubby land. Maybe something could be looked at just there.
The thing about the car park, though, I mean, at the moment there won't be many cars there, I'll tell you right now. And also, on the tarmac, it's so much easier. You can draw a white line and say this is a designated area for camper vans. If you don't have that, you will have multiple camper vans, and like what we've got down at the river mouth, it's so difficult for the council to actually monitor. Up north, in a lot of the in the Coromandel and in Northland, you nearly always park on a car park area, and it's white lined, and it says 6 vans, and the community can have the rest of it. And if you get there and there's 6 vans, well, you just have to find somewhere else to go.
Because the vanners know that they'll get a fine, and it's not worth it. So people stay within that boundary. It might be a case of working with the community, what sort of size is available. I think maybe it could easily be too many vans down there, but maybe some could be accommodated, maybe tucked in at the bottom, as I say, by the wall, because they're less evident, and so just restrict the numbers perhaps, and then look around for other places. Vanners love the sea views, but they also get really hammered with the salt, and it does play havoc with a lot of the vans, and so they often like a bit of shelter.
But they also, because they're parking by a beach, of course, remember that a lot of people have a romantic idea about the beach, and they just see it as somewhere to go and light a fire, this is what's happened down at the river mouth, is that every single stick of driftwood, including the big logs, have been set on fire. And we are often calling the fire brigade to get them to come down, which we hate, to get them to put the fires out. So parking near a beach is always, that is a problem. So you need to have it monitored. And I really mean like in Hastings, they have the campsite on the beach there, and they have somebody that comes round at about 7 o'clock every evening and checks you out. I mean, that's just the way it is. And there's a number of vans, and if you get there too late, you have to find somewhere else to park. This is the way it is when you're a vanner in these freedom campsites. but you can't have it without monitoring.
So
Great.
our final word really would be to encourage the closing of the current Freedom campsite. That would be our
and have it where somewhere down there, but maybe don't have as many vans. And don't worry about that, because people just find somewhere else to go. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you get there and the designated site is free. That happens all over the country. You just get on with it. If you're a vanner, you just find somewhere else to go. Could be up at Kimberley or further down the coast. There are other freedom campsites. It's not the end of the world if you can't get in at Otaki. You just, well, that's life, when you're a vanner, and you go wherever.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate your reflections and observations. I'll hand over Councillor Coфord.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Stephen. Janet, you've come up with some new comments that reinforce the whole idea that we don't want camper vans along the foreshore along Otaki. Hey, this has been going on for some time. I worked for a firm of architects in Wellington in 1979, and Murray Scott, the then mayor, summoned us up to Otaki, and we looked at a site near the health camp area opposite the beach. A cluster, sheltered, you could hear the sound of the sea. Then we had Byron Brown's, which is closed down, but I think we've got to just review the whole camping amenity at Otaki and the Kapiti Coast and look for more appropriate areas to park.
Absolutely. Thank you. And they do exist. Just be creative. And I feel for the community that would feel as though they lose their resource to what? When there's other alternatives. So, yeah.
And as a vanner, you realise it's a privilege. Freedom camping only happens in New Zealand, Australia, and to some extent some states in Canada. But for the rest of the world, it's unheard of. And so it's a privilege. And you really need to respect it. And if it's not monitored, you sort of think, oh, what the heck is happening here? Does the council not care? That's the way it goes.
But we did have one suggestion as well to improve the car parking where you're talking of maybe having vans. We like the idea of a wheelchair access, something flat and onto a platform.
So that if you were a vanner or if you were just visitors, that you could actually get down and see the sea if you were in a wheelchair, or if you had a pram even, that you can actually get just slightly over the dunes and there you are on the sand. I think if you were disabled in a wheelchair, it would be pretty amazing if you could get on the sand.
In response to that, I know there is some work being done by our Parks and Reserves team around that being a destination beach access way. So there's some work going on in that space that coincides a little bit with this work around the beach bylaw. So keep an eye out for that. I will ask Councillor Pravanov has a question.
Yes, so thank you. It seems that you have a lot of experience in terms of using travelling around the country freedom camping. One of the things that hasn't been brought up today is, we've been talked about enforcement and fines and what have you. My memory, and I can't actually quite find it here, is that the fines are quite high if a person is caught.
Yes, yeah. It's usually over $400.
What was that, $400?
Over.
Yes, 400. I think it might be slightly more, but I can't remember. So I'm just wondering, and not necessarily from your own experience, but from general chatter that goes on, are there various councils who impose their own fee structure, or do they all resort to the Freedom Camping Act?
Varies.
Yeah, it varies. It's around about $400, and you only need to find a few, and then it's straight on the social media, because everybody looks at the NZMC campsite, and there's a few other Freedom campsites, that people, it's like the Bible.
Right.
You don't usually go to a freedom campsite until you've done that work, and
That bit of
then
research,
that
you know.
research, and then it will say, make sure you don't park on the grass. Make sure you're gone by 8 in the morning.
Stay within the lines.
Stay within the lines.
I got fined $450,
and,
etc.
like, that's it.
And it gets around, and then everybody looks at that and they
Yeah.
stay within the lines.
And they do, and they shove her up. They said, "Oh yes, come, I'll make some space for you. Can get in the line," and they look after each other like that. But you don't need to imply lots and lots of fines to get it in the sort of it's incredibly well used. All these freedom campsites, it's Yeah.
It's there's an issue here with the motorbikes on the beach, and the fine that was set used to be $750, but the police said that's an awful lot, to be out that if they catch someone, they've got to fine them $750. I think they wanted to make it $150. That was more likely for a first offence that they would do that. So every council seems to set its own sort of fee structure, and it's a case of enforcement, really.
Yes, I was just going to say that. So obviously the fine is a deterrent. The key thing is enforcement to get, for people to know that basically if they do something that's not within keeping, they will get paid. And then it works.
It's like it spreads around social media like wildfire.
Perfect, thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Warwick has a follow-up question for you.
Obviously, enforcement costs money to the ratepayer. How well received do you think it would be to people who are going around freedom camping to ask for a koha to the council? Do you think people would pay that, or would they not? If we could put that in our bylaw that we had a donation per night, because
why not?
Wellington does. So if you stay at Garrett Street in Wellington, you pay into a meter, and you buy yourself a night's camping.
Yeah.
Evans Bay is not. That's a freebie.
Yeah.
But Garrett Street would be a good example of and there's about 5 or 6 camper van slots there.
I don't see why not. Honestly, I think that would be a nice idea to say. I mean, people could just give $5, $10. That's fine. If you got everybody who camp gave that, you'd actually get a bit of money. So I think that's a pretty good idea.
Great.
If it was a nice site, we have done, haven't we? I think it was somewhere up Northland. I can't remember where. Yeah, way up north there was a little box, and you could put. I think we put $10 in. Just like it's nothing really. When you're travelling around, and it's a nice site, and it's really well kept. And
actually, the race courses, they're all koha.
Oh yeah, and the race courses all out. It's $10 for the two of us for a night, and it's no problem.
But it's like a koha.
It's like a koha.
Nobody collects it. You just put it in a box.
Yeah.
We could do pay wave.
You could indeed do pay wave.
Yeah.
Swipe it as you come in. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Stephen Janet, for your contribution. We're run out of questions for you, so appreciate the time that you've put in both appearing in person and in your submission to this process for us.
And thank you for asking us. That's really appreciate that.
Good engagement.
Good engagement.
I feel quite heard is what I feel.
Fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that. That is one of our goals in this council, is to ensure that people are feeling heard when they've got something to say to us. So thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Kia ora, Rob.
Good afternoon. I'm Rod.
Rod
McLeod, and hello everyone.
Excellent.
I'm a little bit nervous, that's why.
Don't worry, you can just relax.
I'm mostly worried about that my time's already up.
No, your time's not up.
Is that not the case?
It's not the case. Okay. It's our fault we're running late, not yours.
Yes, I'd be quite happy if you cut me shorter.
Would you like us to cut you shorter? No, you have 5 minutes, Rod.
Yeah, I haven't come here to entertain you, but I don't mind you laughing, so that's okay.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you coming, and look forward to what you've got to say. You do have 5 minutes, and then we'll have some questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Right. My first looking through this document was lots of red lines and prohibition words. And I was disappointed at that. I thought, something's wrong here. Why aren't we as a community, I live in Waikanae, why aren't we welcoming visitors who come to travel and to enjoy the experience of Kapiti? There are lots of things about Kapiti that we can be selling. Cycleways, for instance, trips out to the island. I'm not into tourism, but we've got experts here on the committee who would know what sort of things Kapiti could be selling. Am I able to ask questions, please, Chair?
Who are you asking of?
I'd just like to ask if anyone here has got a camper van.
Sure. Well, it's up to elected members whether they want to respond in terms of
okay,
that.
just
I don't see any danger in asking that question.
Okay. So there's a little bit of experience. Have the consulting group asked all KCDC staff what their opinions are on freedom camping?
It's a good question. I have no idea, but staff have the opportunity to submit.
Yeah, but they would possibly feel a little bit overwhelmed to get this document and think, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. But I'm just sort of thinking, as a community, if we ask our neighbours various things, then we get sort of a feeling. I'm sort of thinking we should be promoting camping, motorhome-friendly towns. I don't actually know what those rules are. Does anyone, do the people who did the research for this document know what a motorhome-friendly town is?
I would assume so. I know our experts and our staff that have assembled this bylaw have done a lot of reading and research, one into the Freedom Camping Act that is passed by central government that this bylaw is responding to.
Okay.
Yeah, so absolutely.
I just don't see it mentioned here anywhere as a possibility. Is it in this document? Does anyone know?
If it's not in the draft bylaw, then no, it isn't referenced in there.
So as a proposal, it doesn't appear to have been considered. And I think it should have been considered as a way of saying, welcome, come to our place, and we should be thinking what we're going to benefit. Now, the only benefit I saw was there a financial one of either $100 or $200 per day per camper van. But there's more than that, and we should be taking advantage of that. What there is people coming here and saying, what a nice area. We could possibly retire here. I'm talking about my demographic, which is a bit selfish. However, there's a lot that we should be getting on the plus side. When I buy a new phone, I get a piece of paper and I put a line down the middle and draw the pluses on that side and the minuses that side. This doesn't seem to have been done in this document. There's no pluses about. It's all about prohibit, restrict, and all that sort of stuff. It's disappointing. And I'm sort of amazed how can the proposal be to prohibit camping in an area that is private land? What is the red cross-hatching doing there? Can anyone explain that? Perhaps later on during the chat. That's one of the things. Another one was a campsite previously allocated opposite 50 for the parade. That's been eliminated as no longer suitable in the assessment. Now, what does that mean? Why is it no longer suitable? It's exactly the same spot as before. We've stayed there before and had very nice interactions with locals, had dined at Sopranos or whatever it isn't now, and had a little dog there and had our glass of wine in the camper and waved to the locals, chatted to people. We've met nice people. It seems if we as a community provide a nice place, then aren't we going to get nice people staying? I don't know if there needs to be so many restrictions. If there is a problem with camper vans, what is it? Is it the length of them? Nobody wants to stay where they're not welcome. The only problems I've ever seen are people who are homeless and they're setting up camp and occupying the area bigger and bigger and making it their own, which is understandable, it's human nature. But I don't know what the problem is with camper vans that you're trying to solve. And that's pretty much all I need to say. Oh, I could say something about the fact that having things like a levy paid online, that'd be quite good. I'd be quite happy to stay so many days in town and I'd put it in my phone and it would come up, this registration plate has paid a levy or it's no use saying make a donation because you either have it or you don't. So paid the levy to stay in the town for so many nights, and you can park anywhere. If you're parking in a place near all the shops, because I notice a lot of the areas that are forbidden or prohibited, commercial areas. Now, why would a camper van want to stay out right outside a shop all day when there's a parking limit of 1 hour or something like that? It's just not going to happen. So there seem to be things in there that seem to be covered by other legislation and also by normal human behaviour, which it's a bit disappointing to sort of think some people, a group of people have gone to a lot of effort and expense, I think, to solve something that I don't know exists. And I was slightly distracted by the Otaki reference, and I've been to Otaki a few times, and I've never seen a camper van shifting the accretion. I don't know what that means. What has actually happened with camper vans down there? They park on a flat spot, that's it. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say, but I'd be happy to discuss anything.
Great, Rod. Appreciate your input. So one of the things that, just in answer to one of your questions at least, the Central Government Freedom Camping Act enables freedom camping anywhere across the nation. So in terms of that act, we are welcoming freedom camping to New Zealand, but it does require councils to respond to protect parts of our district that need protection, because we've heard this morning, and I'd welcome you to go back and have a look at the recording of people's stories and experiences, including one woman who presented who was one of our ambassadors for freedom camping this last summer, and some of her stories of the realities of her experiences of dealing with and interacting with some freedom campers in the Kapiti Coast. I admit that the majority of freedom campers aren't causing problems, but we are very aware that there are a small minority that cause huge problems across our district. And if we allow that continue, it does damage our flora and fauna, our environment. It damages the community aesthetic and enjoyment of our community, of our locations. This bylaw is prohibiting because that's what central government has required us to do. They've enabled it, but required us to prohibit things specific to our district. Hence why the focus of this particular bylaw is so red lines and do not. Okay? So I don't think anyone around this table is wanting to remove freedom camping from the coast. We do see that there are positive aspects to that, and this is fully a response to central government's opening it up, carte blanche across everywhere, across our district, which has some serious issues. We are fully aware that this bylaw probably isn't perfect, hence this consultation and hearing your submission and others today, because we want to get better. I'd welcome you catching up with some of our officers who have been responsible for this bylaw, because they can answer some specific questions you might have. We're not really equipped or able to answer some of those specific questions directly today, but thank you, Rod. I appreciate what you've said. I know we've got some questions around the table. Are you willing to take some questions from people?
Happy to chat.
Great. Michael Moore.
Good afternoon, it is almost.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Rod. I'm Michael Moore from the Waikanae Community Board. Thanks for your contribution. I like the perspective you brought to the table today. We've heard a lot of the problems we hear in the north of the electorate up in Otaki, and there's some real concerns about that, and they've been heard loud and clear. Your observation around focusing on prohibitive or restrictions is really good to hear at this point in the discussion, I think. Along with Councillor Pravanov, we met with Janice Hill recently, who's leading the charge for extending the cycleway and the trails network throughout Kapiti. It's a really exciting project. It fits well within promoting heavily a tourism and an active group of people coming here and staying in camper vans and bringing their bikes with them and what have you too. So I just want to acknowledge your contribution, and I think it brought a really nice perspective to something we really haven't focused on.
Thank you, Michael.
So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, kia ora, Rod.
Hi, Sophie.
Quick question about something that you referenced in your submission, that painting sites you don't feel is necessary. I'm just wondering how you would imagine implementing something like some sort of levy whereby it was connected to a plate if you didn't have designated sites or marked sites. I'm just, in terms of enforcement and kind of ease of operation of the sites, how do you think that not supplying marked sites would aid in that?
Okay, possibly I'm thinking about Waimiha, maybe it's called Fieldway Reserve at the Waimiha stream. That's got a sign that says so many camper vans at a time, but there's no marking because there's not enough paving really. And in my experience that works quite well because we've been there, we've been the second vehicle, and we've seen other camper vans drive in and they drive out because they realise the limit has been reached, but there are no designated spots. That perhaps answers your question about the marking of a site. At the Waikanae Park, that's quite clear. There's two long parks with posts just sort of in the middle saying one here type thing. And that seems to work quite well too. There's a certain amount of self-enforcement that does seem to work quite well. Now, I didn't cover levies in that particular conversation.
No, that's okay. I think you've covered off
Okay.
the intention behind asking the question, so that's really helpful. One other quick question I had is, as the Deputy Mayor's mentioned, we've heard a lot about the amenity value of some of these car parks and how they're being accessed and used by community members. How do we kind of balance that tension in your view? Because it does feel like we need more spots for freedom camping to be done in a way that's enforced and is managed well and is safe. But then also it's obviously really important for our community to still have access to the places that they connect with and really enjoy and find kind of solace in, like those beachfront environments. So how do you think we balance that tension?
I think you're right, there is an issue because whenever we park somewhere, we're thinking we're blocking somebody's view. And so we're sort of aware of that and don't want to spoil the place by having a row of white, generally, which is like a sea wall. I think the only way that could be is just the limit of number of vehicles at any one time. So in other words, not just at night time or any time, but any time, there's only to be two fully self-contained. Now, somebody was talking about the damage to the environment and so on. I don't know if that occurs with fully self-contained vehicles. And possibly can I deviate a wee bit to say, well, more dump stations and compacting rubbish stations would be good, even if there were levies with those. That would sort of help address perhaps the problems that may be seen. I don't know. Sorry, I went off track there.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Rod. That answers the question, though, I think.
The only thing
it feels like quite a tension that we have to grapple with. But
yeah, there is. There's got to be compromise somehow, because otherwise all the best spots that people have paid $1 million to see the sea are occupied by these white blobs, people and their little dogs sipping wine. And I was just going to say that there could be more camping available near public toilets. Wouldn't that help reduce vandalism? I just sort of think we've got to think of the pluses, that we can make use of these motorhomers, these greybeards, and get them in places where they're doing some good. I mean, has there been any survey done of the amount of or reduced vandalism in areas of campsites? I don't know. That's perhaps one of my questions could go to be noted down by somebody who would ask, because I think that the pluses have been forgotten.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Rod.
Thanks, Rod. Thanks, Councillor Hanford. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the chair. Welcome for coming along. As you probably know, I'm one of the Waikanae ward councillors. And so we've had one submission already on the fact that some of the freedom camping sites are going to close, particularly at the end, that they're not included, particularly at the end of Tuteri Street. And I'm just wondering what your views on that are.
Those sites are all together side by side, which I don't think is a good thing. I think if you're going to have 4 sites allowed, they should be scattered around, Because for us residents, when we go down there, we feel, hold on, it's been taken over by gypsies. But for us camper vanners, when we go down there, see them all side by side, it's not as safe. If you're going to restrict something, do it for a reason. And I can't see the reason for Tutiri Street closing down.
Saying that though, with those 4 sites, there have been others, you know, at Otaki Beach, for example, the plan is to have 12 in a row. And you're suggesting that even 4 should be more spread out.
I'm suggesting that whatever number, that they be well spread out to give the opportunity for members of the public to come, so they're not just blocked off by these exclusive use people. So yeah, I mean, I've been to Otaki Beach and I've not seen any problems there with any behaviour. We stayed there Saturday nights. It's just very pleasant. It's just so nice. But that's all I can say.
Okay, so thank you. And so there's something that hasn't actually really been talked about today particularly, and that is the vehicles that are not self-contained. And so there are 3 sites that have been allocated. 2 sites are for a mixture of self-contained and contained, 2 in